All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to Talk Buffalo Podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for locking in, whether it's on the audio side, Spotify, Apple, or whether you're checking this out on YouTube. Appreciate you all. I am, I'm always happy to do a podcast, but I am really excited about today because one of my favorite things from doing this podcast over the first 4+ years or so, especially the first 2 years, is getting an opportunity to have people from the sports media or athletes, former, current Buffalo Bills on, and giving you guys an opportunity to know more about them beyond just the great work that they do or what they do on the field. But truth be told, at some point, I pretty much have had just about everybody from the Buffalo media on, whether it's news media, sports media. So been a long time since I've gotten to have one of these types of shows, which makes me even more excited today because I have on Alaina Getzenberg from ESPN.com, Buffalo Bills beat reporter. First of all, how you doing? But before we even get to anything, I do want to say I've been following you since you came to Buffalo in September. I know how busy it gets, and you literally, and we're going to talk about your life and your career, which again, these are my favorite types of episodes, but it's like you literally jumped into the fire. It's not like you had time to come to Buffalo and unwind and chill for a couple months. I mean, you literally dove right in. You're busy during the season and you got free agency and the draft. So I wanted to wait for the right time. The draft just passed. So this is the right time. How you doing? Great to have you on the podcast.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. That is very true. This has been like the first stretch where I've been like, oh, okay, I can take a breath. My
Yeah,
first official day with ESPN was Friday, and then the week one was that it was 2 days after. So it
that's
was literally
crazy.
like a little too much. So yes, finally getting to take a deep breath and enjoy Buffalo. So it's
That's
been exciting.
that is crazy, Elaine. And I'll tell you, I mean, I remember talking to Matt Perino and he joined the beat with New York Up, and that was in the summer right before camp, which I mean, that was jumping into the fire too, but that seems like a vacation compared to what it was like with you. Even Marcel, the way he came about covering the Bills, and we'll talk about some media stuff and like that in just a little bit. But like I said, when I have somebody on for the first time, these are my favorite types of episodes because my goal is, and we might talk a little bit of Buffalo Bills today, but my goal is for everybody who's gotten to know you since September, everyone who's followed your work, is to give people an opportunity to know a little bit more about you, your story, your career up to this point and stuff like that. And let me start. And let me also say this, by the way, for everybody listening, everybody watching, Alaina and I talked for what, 25, 30 seconds before we started taping. Quite literally the first conversation in person, at least that we've ever had. We talked a little bit on Twitter. So a lot of the stuff that Alaina is going to talk about, it reveals I don't know about it either. Sometimes I know some stuff at a time. I don't know nothing right now. So let's kind of go back to the beginning, man. Like I read, and I could be wrong. I read you're from Maryland originally, but you kind of grew up. You spent time there, Pittsburgh, growing up.
So it's very complicated.
Yeah,
That's like whenever someone asks where I'm from, it's like, like, do we have to? So to make it quick and easy, I was born in Pittsburgh, lived there for the first 10 years of my life, and then moved to Baltimore, Maryland. So you're good. And then was there through high school, graduated high school there, and then went to college. So I've lived in different places. I went to college in California, so I've lived all over the country, but I'm more so, I say I'm from Pittsburgh. That's kind of where I feel like I grew up more, but it was really half and half. So a little
Did
bit
you
of
grow
everything.
up? Did you grow up a fan of any specific teams? Like, did you grow up a fan of the Pittsburgh teams, or did you not care about them? Did you have your own favorite teams?
I yes, I'm always scared to like bring this up with
Don't be.
Buffalo folks,
Nah.
but yes, I did grow up. I grew up as a Steelers fan. I
Mhm.
grew up as I'm still a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. I'm not sure how that goes over. Pirates. That was kind of the sports world I grew into, but I think it's also one of my favorite things is being from Pittsburgh because otherwise I wouldn't love football as a sport the way I
Sure.
do because it's Western Pennsylvania, everything, it's similar. It's very similar to Buffalo, actually, just Pittsburgh, like the vibe. So football is so important, from like all levels up, and that's where I fell in love with it. And of course, you know, now it's a career and all that, but that is where Pittsburgh and just seeing how much that community cares about football is where my love of the sport came from.
What were some of the things as a youngster that you were into? Obviously, I'm sure you, I mean, you just talked about it, you were a sports fan at a young age too. What were some of, whether it's sports or just other things that you were into as a kid, as you kind of, you kind of mold yourself as a child, and eventually, and we're going to talk about you going to school and when you decided that this was when you wanted to do with your life. But as a young kid, like what were some of the things that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, not writing. I hated writing, so
Yeah, really.
not that at all. I played a lot of soccer, so sports was a huge part of my life, from watching and playing. My parents had us playing a lot of sports, but I really loved I wish I was a better athlete, but I have no hand-eye coordination at all. So, but I love soccer, so I played that for, almost all the way through high school, so that was a huge part of my life. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think into things normal kids are in. Definitely, I mean, sports more than like a lot of girls that I was friends with at the time, and boys a lot of the time too.
Sure.
um, and yeah, I mean, I did a lot of like, I don't know, I was pretty normal kid stuff. I think it was sports, music, that kind of thing. Nothing super outside the norm. There was no big like outside activity or anything like that. Just nerdy stuff. I did a lot of my time was spent on school, so that's not so fun.
Now, you said when you were a young kid, at least anyway, you hated writing.
Hmm.
I think that's so fascinating. I've had an opportunity to talk to so many sports media people, especially from the Buffalo area, on this through the years, and it's crazy to me how much it varies. Like there's some, and everyone turns out to be an excellent reporter, but there's some people who they knew when they were 6, 7 years old. They could barely spell their name, but they knew like right away. They were like, I know I want to be a writer. I want to be in sports media. And then there's other people who never really gave it a second thought. Matt Marino's a perfect example. He didn't know when he was by high school that he wanted to be a beat reporter. You know what I mean? It kind of came later in life, whereas other people they know right away. At what point, and was it even before you went to college? Which because that kind of fascinates me as well. So I'm looking forward to asking you about that. But was it like sometime in high school? Was it in college where you really decided that, hey, I like doing this? Also, I mean, a lot of people like to write, but there's a difference between enjoying writing and being good at it. Like, at what point did you realize that, hey, I'm a good writer, and maybe I might be able to turn this into some type of career?
Yeah, so that it's a really interesting thing because, like you said, it's I've met a bunch of people like you referenced that were like, "Yep, I knew like right away this
Right.
is what I was gonna do." So I definitely know what you mean there. But yeah, for me, through high school, like I hated writing. Like I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't doing that much of it outside of like the requirements. So when I was going to college, I went to Berkeley and I had a lot of choices and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I wanted to go to a school that had a lot of, like a state school that had a lot of options and I could kind of figure that out. But I knew I was like, I thought I remember thinking like in high school, oh, that'd be cool to like report on a team for like a student newspaper, but like very vaguely, like not
Sure.
seriously. And then when I got to college, I was looking for clubs to join and all that. And I was like, I'll apply for the student newspaper and who knows? And I got in and started covering men's and women's golf at Cal and knew nothing about golf. And it was horrific. Please don't look up those stories. So bad. But I never stopped. It was that freshman semester, first semester of college, writing about golf. I hated golf at the time and like didn't get it. And then I just kept going and didn't stop after that.
So even in high school, like a lot of people who go on to become journalists, whether sports, news media, whatever it may be, they're by that point, they're the editor, maybe the editor in chief of their high school newspaper and stuff like that. That really wasn't your thing, even in high school then, huh?
I did nothing to that, nothing that would make you think this person's going to be a sports reporter in high school at all.
So your high school yearbook doesn't read most likely to become a Buffalo Bills beat reporter then?
No, but that's the thing too. Like it definitely does it. And it also, like we had a student newspaper in high school and I just had literally no interest at all. So you just never know, I guess.
What were you good at academically in high school? I mean, obviously, listen, you got into Cal Berkeley, which I want to ask you about that in a second, but obviously you had options, choices. You were a good student, even if writing wasn't your thing. Like what were you excelling at that you were afforded opportunities to go?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know excelling, but I did a lot. I did a lot of student government. I was like very involved in that. I did a lot of volunteer stuff. We had like different clubs with that. I'm trying to think. I did mock trial for a little bit. I like did all sorts of different things. Like I did a lot of experimenting, but nothing that was writing involved. Like it was all like more just going out and doing things, and more active versus like sitting down and writing. So whole bunch of stuff and none of it. Like I had a bunch of friends that like did yearbook and like worked for the newspaper, and I was like, that sounds fun. Cool, good for you. It was like I think people from high school are probably like surprised that I'm here now, but I haven't asked them. So.
One of the things that fascinates me about your career and just your trajectory in general is that you said so you grew up in Pittsburgh, or you're born in Pittsburgh, you spent 10 years there, and you moved to the Baltimore area and you go to school there. And you go to Cal Berkeley, which is like literally on the other side of the country for, ultimately for journalism. But what made you want to go to Cal Berkeley specifically? And were there other schools that like you were strongly considering, other schools that you came close to going to, or was it like Cal Berkeley for you pretty much all the way?
No, not at all. So I knew I didn't want to be in the state of Maryland, which like I like Maryland. It's a great place. But for me, a lot of people from high school went to the same school, went to University of Maryland, and it was time. So I applied all over the country, actually. It was a very broad search. And I like I said, I didn't know what I was looking for. So I applied to all sorts of schools. And Berkeley was probably one of the better ones I got into. It was Michigan and UCLA were also top contenders at the end there. Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. But I ultimately, I do have family out in Northern California. So it wasn't like I was completely out there alone. My grandmother lives out there, but it was the scariest thing I've ever done. Moving all the way across the country. I knew no one going
Culture shock?
Huh?
Culture shock going from like Maryland all the way to the other coast in California?
Yes, most definitely. And it was also just like a lot of kids knew each other there because they went from like high schools into Berkeley. Like they all had friends already, and I knew no one. So very daunting, but it was a great choice because it pushed me to like be very in an uncomfortable situation. And I loved it there.
So. Sure. Now, for a lot of people, like say someone like myself, I grew up in Buffalo. Well, yeah, actually I did grow up in Buffalo. I've lived in some of the suburbs, but basically, Buffalo's Buffalo. All the suburbs are basically Buffalo. Anyway, we all in cities like this, you grow up together, you go to high school with guys and girls together. Some of you go to colleges together, the state colleges, whatever. Then you end up in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, you're at the same bars, hanging out, having like high school reunions, like seemingly every month and stuff like that. So you knew pretty much when you were even a teenager, you're like, all right, nothing against Maryland. Like to your point, it's not like you hated it, but you knew at that point that you really wanted to branch out and live a little bit and go see other parts of the country and experience different cultures. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I don't know why I really, to be honest, like where that strong feeling was coming from, like why I felt that way. But there were so many schools like out there to choose from, and I was like, what are the options? Where could I go? I'm really, really close with my family, so it was pretty weird for me to be like, I want to go like so far. So that was. I wish I understood, 18-year-old Alaina a little better maybe. But yeah, it was very daunting, I mean, I think I knew that like I needed to be in a new environment to kind of figure things out and that
Sure.
sort of thing. And going across the country was certainly a new environment. So
And I respect the fact that, you're pretty much saying at that point of your life, you weren't quite sure what you were gonna do with your life and as an adult at that time. Usually, if somebody is from one area and they go to another part of the country or something for school, it's usually because maybe they're getting recruited as an athlete or they're going to a specific school for a specific reason for sure that they're locked in, and you weren't at that point. You still had it to figure out, which I love that part. I think that's a really cool story. Talk about your experiences. All right, so now leading up to going to Cal Berkeley, you never really cared too much about writing. It wasn't your thing, and sports journalism definitely wasn't your thing at that point. But it obviously became your thing when you were at school at Cal Berkeley. Talk about your experience joining that newspaper a little bit, and just for people who are listening, young people who might, they might go to college and they might want to kind of get into that same field. Like, what was that experience like for you in learning what you learn and just the college experience of being writing for a newspaper?
yeah, it was awesome. It was by far my favorite thing I did in college, and nothing like it is what I remember most. It's the relationships I still
Hmm.
nothing comes close to that. And like the biggest thing for me was kind of like I referenced earlier, I wanted to cover Cal football, and like that wasn't something freshmen or sophomores really got to do.
Right.
So you had to kind of, pave that path. And I had to say, when they said, can you cover golf? I had to say, yep. Like you got to jump in. You have to do those things. I covered so many different sports, so much swimming, diving, field hockey, like like all kinds of sports, and you say yes to those things. And honestly, some of my favorite stories from college were I also was not basketball is not super big in Pittsburgh or Baltimore, so like I
Right.
wasn't like watching a ton of basketball or anything like that, but I covered men's basketball, I covered women's basketball, and wrote some stories that I'm to this day like proud of and like thought were really cool and had experiences. So I think the biggest thing for me was being open to like trying all those different sports. And I also was an editor for a year, which also I highly recommend for any writers because editing your own work is half the battle, and I'm
Sure.
still not great at that, but we're making progress. But it's so important to be an editor and to kind of hone those skills. So I loved it. It was a lot of late nights. It was, I don't know when I did my homework some of those years, but I every second of it was amazing. And I think through that, it was like, oh, possibly someone would pay me to like do this full time. That was when it first started entering my brain, was kind of later, like as the years went on.
At what point did you start to get a lot more confident in your talent and your abilities? Because again, I mean, you're saying it that when you first started covering sports, you covered sports that you really didn't know well. Obviously, that's a very arduous task to learn them, let alone cover them. At what point did you start to really feel confident in yourself that, hey, man, you know what, I can do this?
Yeah, it took a while. I don't know if
Mhm.
it was in college, even when I was like getting internships, when I started getting internships and stuff, because the journalism internship process is horrible. They're so hard to get. They're very competitive, and there was a lot of doubt involved with that. I think definitely I covered, for context, my first season covering Cal football was Jared Goff's junior year at Berkeley. So I covered him becoming the number one pick in the
Oh,
draft,
that's right.
which
Yeah.
yeah, which
I forgot
if you
about
had
that.
watched much college, we like when we heard that was coming along that he might be the number one pick, shocked. He played horribly for half of that season, so it was quite the surprise. And
Yeah.
I think that take held up pretty well. So, um, so doing that whole process, I think covering football for a season of sport I knew so well, made me more confident because it was seeing like, okay, all these skills now combined with a sport I'm already so knowledgeable about. Like, I can do this more confidently and feel like I can tell better stories because I know the sport so well. So I think it was like combining all my skill sets helped, but it was also just getting more experience, like the internships I did. And yeah, seeing people doing it, like what it was like as a job, and being like, oh, I could do that like full time. I think that also helped.
Before going to the Charlotte Observer,
Mhm.
between school or internships or stuff you did before Charlotte, I've read you worked in a couple different markets after California, right? Where were you before Charlotte?
Yeah, I think the latest count, this is like a fact that I've tried to really, like, I'm pretty proud of. I've lived in 6 or 7 states. It's like doing the math is hard, but I've lived a lot of places.
That's
So
cool.
I covered the St. Louis Cardinals for a season, which was cool because you got to know your baseball in St. Louis. Similar to Buffalo fans, they have no problem telling you if there's something they feel you need to know, which
Right.
was a great experience. And then I actually moved to New York City, and covered. I worked for CBS Sports, so I did a little TV, a little background work, mostly on NFL, but also like the NCAA tournament I helped out with, and some college football, but a lot of NFL stuff. So like the NFL Today pregame show and like some of their games and that sort of thing. And then what did I do after that? And then I moved to Dallas and worked for the Dallas Morning News for just 6 months, which I don't recommend. But then I got the Observer job to cover the Panthers, and it was just the perfect opportunity. So it just worked out that way.
What a well-traveled young woman you were before you even really got your career going, which ultimately kickstarted anyway in Charlotte. I mean, you're talking Pittsburgh, down Maryland, going to school in California, St. Louis, New York, Dallas. That's pretty awesome. Let's talk about Charlotte. Now that was look at the notes, like that was 2019, right? When you went to Charlotte?
Yes.
Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Where how did that opportunity come about for you? Like you said, you're interning, you're working these jobs, you're working your way up, the sports media ladder, so to speak. How did that opportunity present itself for you to end up in Charlotte?
Yeah, it's pretty boring. I sent an email.
That's
I
not boring.
yeah, so a lot of these jobs, like that's a McClatchy newspaper, and if you want me to go on a tangent one day, we can talk about McClatchy because anyway, so I like applied, and I was like, no one's ever gonna read this application. Like it went into some server somewhere, like who knows who's reading it. So I sent the sports editor there an email, and I was like, hey, I'm super interested in this job. Here's my background, blah 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 blah. Emailed me back like 3 minutes later and was like, let's talk. And it just kind of went from there. And I started covering the Panthers mid-season, so which was an experience. Yeah.
I mean, you know what? Talk about shooting your shot. That's pretty
Yeah.
much literally what you did. You sent an email and it ends up leading to like I said, the real kickstart of your professional sports media career. I want to take a real quick break. I'm going to come back with Alaina on the other side, and then we're going to get into Buffalo because obviously Alaina covers the Bills now. I'm interested in finding out how that came about. Plenty more coming up. Alaina Getzenberg from ESPN. Be right back. All right, I'm back with Alaina. So last year, I mean, for some people who didn't know anyway, out of nowhere, Marcel Louis-Jacques, who's covered the Bills for a couple of years, he goes to Miami. By the way, Marcel is somebody that I've had on the show a couple of times. I got to know pretty well, became pretty good friends. We went out for wings a couple of times, did a couple chicken wing episodes here. Anyway, I'm very interested in knowing this, how the opportunity came about from you to go from Charlotte to Buffalo, obviously with ESPN, as opposed to the newspaper that you worked at. And you can be completely honest with people. Was this an easy decision? Was it a hard one to come to? How did this all play out?
Yeah. So I've known Marcel for a bit, actually. We're very like it all connects. So Marcel,
Sure.
I'm sure everyone here probably listening and watching knows, was at the Charlotte Observer before he came to Buffalo. And so we followed the exact same path.
Mm-hmm.
And I received a phone call. Our boss, both of our boss, called me randomly. It was like I was packing for Panthers training camp, and said, "Hey, how do you feel about moving to Buffalo?" And in the moment, I was like, "I don't know. I've never been to Buffalo. I don't know how I feel." But I was like, "It's ESPN. I know the Bills are good, and it's a really fun market." I was like, yeah, sure. Like it was very, I didn't know how to feel. So long road, but did interviews and all that. And it was a hard decision. Like I don't think I have no problem saying that. I was finally like, I don't know if people really know this from the outside. Being a beat reporter, it like takes years before you like really get your groove. You
Sure.
build your relationships. It's not something that happens overnight, because the best beat reporters, establish their connections, really like know their team, and like
Mm-hmm.
that you can't manufacture that. That takes time.
Right.
And I was finally feeling like, oh, I got this in Charlotte. Like it was like grooving, we were great. And so to pull myself out of that situation, where I was living, and to move again was daunting. But with this team and with this, like I said, this market, knowing what I knew then, and still had to learn about Bills fans and the community and all that, and working for ESPN, and Marcel called me many a times to convince me that I would not regret taking this job. So shouts to him. That's how it all worked out.
I'll say this too. It is you to your point, you're 100% right. You when you're a beat reporter and you come cover a team, it does take time to develop relationships. First of all, you get to know your colleagues, the people that you're working with. I mean, in a way it's competition, but in a way they're your colleagues, they're your peers. So you're getting to know them, and then you're getting to know a front office, a staff, a media relations staff, and then you're trying to develop relationships with the players, which obviously in COVID that makes it's that's another story in itself how difficult that is. So yeah, sure, that's hard. I should ask you this too with Charlotte. Obviously, on the football side, on football side only, it was a shit show right there going on with the Carolina Panthers. But did you enjoy living in Charlotte? Like the area itself? Did you enjoy your time there?
Yeah, I love Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's a great city. I mean, it's not. I didn't think I was going to be there forever and ever. But I
Right.
did really love it, and like you said, you make like it's non-work side. I had friends. Like I was doing all right, but the weather is lovely, and
It
they could use
is.
a little bit. The fall here is 10 times, 1,000 times better than the Charlotte fall. But yeah, I did enjoy it, and that was also part of the decision making as well.
Sure. Now, again, you get to Buffalo, and I can't emphasize this enough, everybody listening or watching, how difficult it must have been for you to go from covering one team's beat to another for another outlet, and literally just days before the season starts. I just can't imagine how difficult that must be for you. And obviously, you've done very well. So props to you. But again, just how hard was it for you initially coming to Buffalo, which, by the way, you said you've never been to this area before. You've never been here before. So on top of throwing yourself into the professional fire, you're looking for a place to live. You're trying to learn more about the place that you're going to be living in. That is a hell of a lot to have on someone's plate just days before the regular season starts. I just can't imagine how difficult that part of it must have been for you.
Yeah, it sucked. It was really hard. The first couple weeks, probably through week 3 of the season, I was living in a hotel by the mall, and just driving back and forth from Orchard Park, and having Chick-fil-A for dinner. It was not great. um, but it was difficult, and it was also partly because I wanted to do such a good job, and really get myself okay, the season's starting, this could be a big season, really jump in and all that. And it's hard when you're learning the team as you go, kind of. I had done as much research as I possibly could, but it's until you're here, some of it's hard to do. So yeah, and not having locker room access only made it more difficult, because it's
Sure.
there's still guys on this team I haven't met yet, because who are returning, because they weren't made available.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just how it works. So that makes it harder. But I think I just did, what do I have to get done today, was kind of my approach to the season. Because if I thought too much about what actually was happening, I think I would have had just a panic attack every day. We just there was a game that week, what did I have to get done? And just kind of going through it. And I'm way, way more excited for this season, because I feel like now I know what to expect and can
Sure.
really dive in a bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, for sure. And one cool thing, like I said, about not having you on when you first came in, which again, it just worked. You were spinning around in circles at that time, but now that you've had a full season and covering the team, you've gotten to know a lot of the people that you work alongside with pretty well, your peers, your colleagues here in Buffalo, and everything I've heard is you fit in outstandingly well in the sports media community. I mean, these guys and girls, and I'm not just saying this because you're on my podcast. I truly, honestly mean it. They've raved about you. Matt Perino, I'll call him out. Matt Perino, John Scott have told me straight up, because when the hell are you going to have Lynn on this podcast? Because we went, in fact, we just did a show maybe 2 months ago or so. We did it at Imperial Pizza, and they both said that to me. And I'm like, after the season, she's busy. But anyway, what's it been like getting to know these guys and girls in the Buffalo sports media? It does seem, and I'm kind of asking a rhetorical question because I've asked a lot of people this, but it is competitive. I mean, it's always competitive because you want to have the best story, of course, but also it does feel like the Buffalo sports media, for the most part anyways, is a pretty tight-knit community. Would you agree?
Yeah, they're all right.
They're all right. They're all right.
No, I have, Marcel had said great things. I was coming from a beat where I had some close friends and all that. It's a weird environment, really. Like you said, it's competitive, but like these are the people you're around every day, so they become like friends. You know, it's like any co-workers kind of. It's a weird thing. But no, I have been everyone's been great. I found so many people on this beat that I really enjoy talking to, that I find entertaining. There's, as everyone knows, there's so many personalities, and like, you know, like everyone's got their thing, and like just hanging out, like waiting for a press conference to start is fun. Everyone's been so welcoming, and like I have lists of food recommendations from like 4 different people that I've not even like made a dent in yet because like it's too many. So yeah, I've loved getting to know this media group, and I think it's really cool because there's a lot of people who, like, this struck me right away, that like you kind of mentioned earlier, almost all of them are from Buffalo. So it's been interesting, like getting their different perspectives on like this team, and like even just what Buffalo is like. And everyone's been very nice and understanding, like the newness to Buffalo and all of that sort of thing.
Is that going to be part of the comfort process for you going in the next season? Obviously, now you're more familiar with the organization, some of the players, at least some of the players, the job and all that stuff. But now you've also, again, after getting thrown into a fire to start the season, now you've had an entire off season, and you kind of feel like you're a little bit more on the same playing field as everybody else. Whereas last year you had 3 days, and now you're covering you got to write a story on a team that you pretty much have seen very little.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just that comfort level is going to be much better for you going in this season, right?
Definitely. It's significantly better, but I would say I'm still learning.
Sure.
I think it's 10 times better. It's only going to go up, but yeah, I mean, I think even like my understanding of like how like the smaller things work, like it's like the stuff you wouldn't think about is so helpful. And yeah, so I think I've made huge steps in that. I'm excited to cover a training camp. I've never been to Rochester in my life, so like that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's like things like that where it's like crossing them off.
It's a good vibe.
I'm really excited about. So
yeah, it's a good vibe. Fans are great in Rochester. And to your credit, you did have big shoes to fill, because Marcel was a popular sports media figure here, and you're following now in the same footsteps. With all respect due to my man Mike Rodak before him, who covered the Bills. I love Mike. Mike was awesome, but as Bills fans, not a fan, because he was perceived anyway as a big New England Patriots fan. So Marcel was like a fresher breath there to a lot of Bills fans, and now you're carrying that torch. Going out. Let me ask you this too. What is your take on social media? Because obviously, all you in the sports media, you have to use it. Yeah, I mean, you can't exist without sports media today. Your stories get right out as soon as you put something out, and obviously, it has tons of benefits. But there's also that ugly side to Twitter, and if you haven't experienced it yet, the longer you're here and the more stuff you put out, you're sooner or later you're gonna get those trolls, those stupid idiots who got stupid shit to say to you. You know what I mean? Like, what's your take towards social media? Is it pretty easy for you to balance, why you use it for work and, also some relationships, I'm sure, that you have with people through Twitter, but at the same token, again, you kind of, how do you treat the idiots? Like, is it a quick block for you? Is just a mute? You just ignore it? Like, what's your take on social media?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's something that's like I don't personally talk about enough, because it's such a huge part of my job.
Sure.
So before I became a beat reporter, I hated Twitter. Like I thought it was the worst. And I still have mixed feelings about Twitter because I think sometimes, and like to answer your question, like I don't have a healthy balance, I don't think yet. And like, is this work? Is this like I'm still figuring out like how those balances work. And I don't know if I'll ever I hope I get to a happy place at some point, but it's hard not to be on like Twitter constantly, like checking it and like seeing, because I feel like it's my job. But I think it's really hard. I think I've had I'll be honest, it's been interesting, like, because so I came from covering the Panthers, and I've said this, since I've been covering the Bills, a totally different fan base, like almost like a 180 from Bills fans who are so passionate, so knowledgeable. They read everything, consume everything. And it's, and I think that's awesome. I would much rather cover a passionate, knowledgeable fan base that we can have conversations. I just think it's sometimes when, it's not like a logical conversation, or like we lose that, like things can be funny and like that's okay. It's okay if something's like just a joke, and then not everything has to be taken super seriously, or we can disagree. Like there was this whole thing with like the draft in the first round, and would it be a running back? Would it be a blah, 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 whatever? And it's like we're all just mocking things, we're like it's fun. It doesn't have to be, if someone's wrong or like predicts incorrectly, that's okay. Like it doesn't have to be like the end of the world. Or there's other examples, but that's just one that came to mind, where it's like I just saw people on Twitter like reacting a little too strongly, I thought, in some cases, and I said, I think disagreeing is great. We should, if I write something and like you think, hey, they should have done X, Y, and Z, like that's great to have a conversation about it, but I don't have to be like, no one has to be a horrible person because we have different views on football. Like I think that's where the balance is. And almost, I would say like 85% of my interactions have been great. Like they've been fantastic. It's just the outliers, and those, of course, the ones that stick with you.
And of course, and the more popular you are, the more popular you get, the more people are going to be following you, and the more people that you're going to get drawn into stuff that you don't necessarily want to. And to your point, there is a difference between people who are passionate and don't agree with you, and maybe they're going a little overboard in their disagreements, between those people. And then there's just assholes, man. There's just insightful seeking trolls who their sole purpose is to generate a reaction from you, whether it's anger or whatever it may be. Those are the people you got to get rid of them. Again, whether it's blocking them or just not letting them ruin your day. That's where I think it could be a little tricky for guys and girls like yourself, to kind of find that balance where it's like, I'm not going to let this jerk ruin my day. You know what I mean? That's probably the biggest struggle. So now you've been here for a while. And again, you started right away, so you didn't get really an opportunity to know much about the city. And then the season ends, and and I just came back. So I lived there my whole life, and then I moved to Florida for 5 years. I moved back last summer, and I could tell you this was probably the worst winter of my life. It never, ever, ever felt like it was never going to end. I mean, we're in the second week of May, and it's finally nice. You can go outside, t-shirt and shorts, go take a nice little stroll around the neighborhood. That's really cool. You were here, so you would know. I mean, it was a long, relentless, consistent, windy, just terrible winter. Now, was this, again, you live in Charlotte, California, all these cities you mentioned. I mean, you grew up in Pittsburgh and Maryland. So it's not like you're not used to colder weather, but was this like really extreme? Was this a little bit difficult? Which, by the way, when I did see the one picture, Marcel kind of introduced you with the snow scraper. I just thought that was hilarious. But how tough was it, honestly? And you can be honest because you haven't been here that long. How tough was this winter for you? Or was it not that tough?
Yeah, I have used Marcel's snow scraper many a time. So shouts to Marcel. Thanks for passing it off. If you haven't seen that picture, it is pretty great. Marcel was super proud. He came up with it. All the credit to him for that.
That's funny.
He was like, I don't need this at all in Miami, and he does not. Yeah, it was by far the most. I lived in Pittsburgh for a while, but I didn't have to deal with something like this before, and it was hard. People have told me, so I live in the Elmwood Village area, and people said, oh yeah, like it doesn't snow there as much as it does like in South Towns and like all this other like near Orchard Park and all that. And I was like, oh great, cool. And then that was not the case at all.
Nope.
So I called all them liars. I like to say that first. It was hard, but it was also, it was like what I expected to an extent. I expected it to be cold. I expected it to snow. I knew what I was getting into here. I wasn't expecting like 60-degree days in December. So I would have preferred it snowed maybe a little less than it did, but it was, I think after the first time, like I got used to it and kind of knew more what to expect. The first time it snowed a lot, whenever that was, it was like, okay, it's happening. Like, how will I survive? But once I knew I could do it, and like, there's something like I think if it's gonna be cold, I'd rather it just snow, because then at least it looks nice.
Yeah,
if
sure.
It's gonna be cold anyway, so
well,
that's
honestly,
kind of my approach to it.
Was there at least one or two times though where you might have walked outside your apartment and you were like, "What in God's name am I doing here?" I had a career going in Charlotte. I went to school in sunny California, and now I am freezing to death in Buffalo, New York. There had to be one or two times, at least for in the moment. You're like, oh, what the hell am I doing here?
Oh, totally. I'm human. Like, yes, absolutely. I mean, there was a time when like, you're driving down I'm driving down to Orchard Park and it's like sunny and there's no snow down there. And I'm driving away from my like, whatever, 16, whatever it was. Sure. And it was like, why am I doing this? But yeah, those moments came, and it was when it was the wind though, for me is what I was.
It was very windy.
So windy.
Yeah,
no one warned me properly about this wind. That was when I was like, I'm moving in a direction I did not intend because of the wind.
It was like Chicago here. It was like Chicago this winter. It was way windier than a normal, typical Buffalo winter. But I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm sounding all doom and gloom with the weather. You live in the village and you are coming up to a very nice time of the year. It does get alive and the weather gets nicer. Awesome people watching, lots of festivals going on, stuff like that. Now you've had a little bit of time to, during the off season, again, not all work. Like, so have you gotten to know your city a little bit better? I mean, I'm sure you still got a lot to learn, but you feel like you're starting to get a little more comfortable, not the professional side, just the personal side, living and being here.
Definitely. I mean, I love like part of why I picked Elmwood Village is I like walking to think. Like I like the ability to like walk, and like there's such pretty houses like in these neighborhoods, and like it's just cool to like see what's around here. So yes, definitely I'm so excited. I've heard lovely things about Buffalo like in the summer, and I'm figuring out like trips, or if I want to go somewhere, I was like, I want to make sure I'm here like enjoying this city and like what it's like when it's the sun is shining. Like I'm so excited. Even for this week, I'm excited. So yes, definitely. I've gotten to explore some, still checking out some areas, but it's been cool because I think there's more neighborhood. It's all Buffalo, like you said. It's all Buffalo. It's all one, but there's like different vibes like in different spots, and I've been trying to kind of take those all in and figure out what all the different areas have to offer. So that's been fun too.
And there truly is a lot to do when it's this time of year or getting into this time of year. And I will say that the great thing about living in Buffalo, now, like I said, you were in California, you were in Charlotte, where it's pretty much decent weather all year round. I just spent 5 years in Florida where it's almost always hot. The one thing about Buffalo is when it gets to be this time of year, you do appreciate it more. You don't take the days for granted. You want to go out, you want to get something done, you want to do something outside. Whereas again, when you're in California or Florida and it's almost always nice, it's just another day. So that is the cool thing about Buffalo. I would be remiss before we get to our fun fact finale. I would be remiss. You've been here long enough. Like, what's your take with chicken wings? And I know you probably everybody probably asked you this, but like, do you have a couple favorite wing spots as of now? I'm sure you haven't gotten to, all the places that you'd like to, but I'm sure you got to at least a few of them. You got a couple favorites yet?
I do. So I like to say for the record, because I don't think I've had an opportunity to say this on the record somewhere, I hate ranch and like came in as like a big blue cheese person, and it's something I'm really proud of. So I'd like to
what to say. Good girl. Yeah.
I think ranch is disgusting. So I mean, this is very boring, but to me, barbell that's my favorite. I think it's fantastic.
It is. Everybody does.
So those are my favorite. I've had a couple. Like I think I've tried. So Elmo's is one. Perino actually. I'm gonna call him out. We've been trying to schedule like to go, and it's been very difficult. So that's one I must go to next.
You must.
So that's on my list. I've tried some of the others that like people have like recommended the best, but to me, barbell set like a bar. Oh, hate that. But I set a bar that like I haven't. That to me has been the best by far.
They are. If they're not the best, they're one of the 2 or 3 best in Western New York. Very popular, and for good reason. I mean, they live. A lot of places don't always live up to the hype, with certain foods and things like that. But barbell always does live up to the hype for sure. Before we get to the fun fact panel, I want to ask you one Bills question, and this is the only Bills question I got for you today. Do you feel like right now, and again, you're new to covering the team, but you also covered them last season, and you've gotten to know this organization fairly well. You look at everything that this team has right now. You got Josh Allen going into his 5th year. You got continuity with a lot of the coaches. I mean, they lost Dable, but Ken Dorsey got promoted. So there's a lot of continuity on the coaching staff. There's a lot of continuity among the players. They gained more than they lost this offseason. I mean, they signed Von Miller a year after drafting using their first 2 picks on defensive ends. On paper, this team doesn't have any holes. Maybe they go into the draft needing a corner. They got one. They a pass catching running back. They got one. This team on paper looks the part, and quite literally, they are the betting favorite right now in Vegas to win the Super Bowl this year. Do you consider this? And this is a reason why I want to ask you this, is because I know I'm going to get an objective answer, not a fan answer, somebody who covers the team. Do you feel like this year for the Bills is pretty much Super Bowl or bust? Like if anything short of a Super Bowl this year should absolutely be considered a disappointment. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I don't know what else, they can say whatever. If you signed Von Miller to me, that's it.
You're all in.
That's about as all in as it gets.
Sure.
They gave him a ton of money. Like I don't think he's, for his age, like the amount, and he's still playing well. Like we all saw that in the playoffs last year for sure. He's playing really, really well, and that's great. But they paid him a lot of money, and you don't do that if your goal is to like make it to the AFC Championship game.
Right.
Like that's not. This team has the talent to win a Super Bowl, and that is the goal. And honestly, like, I mean, I think they will be very good for years to come, and they will continue to have a talented roster. But Josh Allen's contract amount, the amount he's counting against their cap, is going to increase. And that is only going to make things more difficult. They'll still have a talented roster around him, but it doesn't get easier. So like they'll get more cap space as the cap, whatever. But yes, This year, I think when you look at the talent on this roster, what they've done, where they've been in the past couple of seasons, what this team can do. I mean, if they had, no one likes to play this scenario, but like they had a very good chance of it last year. And I think they have improved the roster this offseason. So yes, I mean, I think at this point, that's fair to say.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, AFC Championship 2 years ago, been there, done that. Last year, 13 seconds, that'll live in infamy forever with Buffalo sports fans. Should have been back to the AFC Championship. On paper, everything is there. And, the last handful of years, it's been about process. Trust the process. Well, the process at this point needs to be the Super Bowl, because anything short of that was a disappointment. I'm glad you agree, but I wanted to ask, because again, I knew I would get a fair, objective answer. Sometimes I get a little emotional and I start speaking as a fan more than anything else. But anyway, all right, so here's what I want to do. I want to end this the same way I always do when I have someone out for the first time, and that's give fans an opportunity to know a little bit more about you by doing a fun fact finale. I'm just going to ask you some random questions, not like a lot of deep thought required, like whatever the first thing that pops in your mind, just spit it out. And if you get stumped, so be it. Good to go?
Ready.
All right, man. Your favorite all-time athlete?
I do have a hard time with this.
So does almost everyone, by the way.
To pick one is very hard. I am going to pick I think I don't want to be hated on for this. I think for me, it's Troy Polamalu because he is the first athlete. I know it's not like a whatever he wasn't, whatever you feel about
Sure.
him, but for me, that was like watching him fly around the field and like make some explosive plays and like the way he carries himself. To me, that was like my favorite from a young age, and like now I've gotten into other sports, but I'm gonna go with like my roots on that one.
Troy, my son had a Troy Polamalu jersey, and I disagree with you about one thing. I think 99% of even Bills fans understand that you weren't born and raised in Buffalo, so you are allowed to be fans of other teams and other players. I think that's an excellent answer. All right, next one. Favorite city you visited? Now, again, you've lived in some
Ooh.
big time cities. What's like your favorite city that you've like visited, whether it's a vacation, a working vacation, a personal vacation, whatever it may be, just a place you've been to, like, man, this is awesome.
That's a really tough question. I think mine would be though, I've been to Amsterdam. I
Really?
visited Europe. Yeah. And that to me was like, I could see living here. Like it was just, I love the vibes. They all ride bikes. Food is like a very important quality in like a city I like. Food is by far maybe that when you asked what I was into, food is like my favorite, my hobby. I love to eat and like try different stuff. So to me that, or it would also be I'm going to go international because I've lived in so many US cities. I also really love Tokyo. So
When
that
did
was
you go to those? When did you go to Amsterdam and Tokyo? Were you young?
in college. I actually did a Europe trip with my sister, which was really fun for a couple of weeks. So we visited a bunch of cities, and then I visited Japan maybe 3 years ago, and it was really really cool.
Do
I
you
love
still do you still I was gonna ask you that. Do you still enjoy well, traveling on a personal basis is one thing. Do you enjoy going on road trips professionally, like covering the team? Because this is where I get a mixed bag. I ask a lot of people this, and some people love going on the road, and some people may I would say probably more of them are ones who've been doing it for a long time and starts to become a little bit of a pain in the ass for them, and they'd rather just cover 17 home games a year if they could. Do you enjoy going to road games?
I love it. I know a lot of people, like you said, who have gotten like to that. I've done this, and
Right, been
like
there, done that, yeah.
I love it. I think that's one of the coolest things. It's just me here. Like I'm at a point where like I can travel and like I've gotten to go to so many cities I probably would never have. Like there's a bunch on our schedule this year. I've actually never been outside the Detroit airport, so that's gonna happen this year. And
Oh,
like
wow.
stuff like that where it's like I don't know how much I would have visited these cities, and I will say I could have done without another trip to Kansas City this year. I've been to Kansas City like 4 times in like a very short. It's been way too much, like the
Right.
Panthers and whatever. I like Kansas City, but overall, I really do enjoy it. And you get to see like I like checking out a new stadium and like what
Sure.
the vibes are. It's really cool. So I'm a big fan.
Who was your first celebrity crush that you could definitely remember?
This is gonna be really bad, but it was definitely Donny Osmond. And like and it was very young because we watched I don't know if anyone will know this movie, but Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, he sings in that and he's much younger than he is now. And that was it for me. And my parents would love to hear that answer. So that's
That
what
was not an answer that I expected. All right, respect though. I like that. All right, what's your go-to snack?
there's so many. Um Go-to snack. Does ice cream count? Is that a
Sure.
snack? Ice cream. Any kind
Okay.
of ice cream.
Okay. What movie have you probably rewatched more than any other movie? Like movie you've seen a million times?
It's close. It's either Remember the Titans, which is like I love that movie. Or any of the Harry Potters. Those are my most watched.
Okay. Call yourself out here a little bit. Like, what's your worst habit? Like, I'm a huge procrastinator, for an example. Like, what's your worst habit?
I'm probably like I way over I don't know if this is a habit or just like something I need to go to therapy for, but I like way overthink things. Like I like put way too much thought into like certain things in the sense that like planning, like making a decision. I'm like, oh, but like I could have a salad or a sandwich. And like sometimes I like really put way too much thought into things like that. So I'm trying to be better about that.
Okay, name a TV game show. It could be something from the past. It could be something from the present where you feel like if you were on this game show, you think you would do well for yourself?
I'm gonna go because the Getzenberg family has talked about this a lot. I'm gonna go with Family Feud because we've decided we would rock that. So that's what I'll go with there.
That's a very popular choice. All right, a couple more here. So let's say instead of doing this via StreamYard right now, and we're two separate locations, video camp. Let's say I'm up in the Elmwood Village and we're out somewhere, we're at Merlin's or something like that. We're having a couple beers and they got karaoke going on. And I say, Alaina, get up there. I want you to sing something. And at least in this world, and I obviously never heard you sing, I don't know if you can sing or not, but whether you can or not, in this world, you are a good singer. What is a song that you're going to get up there, put the slip in, and you're going to start singing, whether it's a fast song, whether it's a slow jam, whatever it may be, something that you think people are going to be really into?
Okay, so I really have never done karaoke in my life, which is like because I think I've been so good at avoiding it because it sounds horrifying to me. There's nothing good I would get out of that. We were trying to do it when actually we were down in New Orleans for the Saints game. We were almost gonna do it as like a beat group, but it didn't happen. So maybe another time. But I think there's a couple. I think I would really rock out to Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus. Like I think that would be a good vibe for everyone. So I'll go with that.
It is funny too. You say that. I would like I could sit here and do a live podcast at a bar with many, many people there and not even blink an eye. I wouldn't even get nervous, but give me a mic and I got to sing something, crippling anxiety, even if there's 4 people in the bar. By the way, amongst you media people, I will say this. I don't know if Sal Capaccio actually is a pretty damn good singer. I don't know if you knew that or not. So next time you talk to Sal, I've heard from many, many people, Sal is a good karaoke singer.
All right, let's hear this.
last couple here. So, and I'm interested in knowing this one because you admitted when you went to college at first, you didn't know what you were going to do. Let's just say you go to Cal Berkeley and you gave the writing thing a shot and it just wasn't going to work out for you. What do you think you may have went on to do with your life if you weren't covering the Buffalo Bills right now for ESPN.com?
I have no idea. I actually have thought about this before and have struggled to come up with an answer. I have a hard time thinking it wouldn't be something involved in sports. Maybe I would have done sports marketing or something like that, but that really, so maybe something like that. Or I could see I really am very passionate about food, which is a weird thing to say, but I could see being a food journalist would be something that I think would be really cool. I know that's kind of in a similar vein, or I don't know, opening up a ice cream place or something like that. I think that would be, I don't know if I actually would have done it, but it sounds like something that would be fun. So I'll go with that.
We talked about Twitter earlier. Who is your favorite Twitter follower or Twitter follow, whether it's another person, whether it's an organization, but we're going to make ESPN ineligible. So you can't say ESPN because you work for them, but maybe a person or like I said, an organization or whatever it may be, your favorite, when you go on Twitter, that the first thing you do is see if this handle tweeted.
I'm going to give a shout out to, you mentioned Catherine Fitzgerald. I think this is a very Buffalo media tip of the cap. Her Twitter handle I know by heart. It's KFitz134. I highly recommend. She's got some great jokes. She's a I ask her for Twitter advice all the time. She sometimes bounces tweets off me and I have no idea why, but she's a fantastic Twitter follow and tells great jokes. So I'll say her.
She is good on Twitter. I'll tell you right now, if she wasn't a journalist, I would suggest to her that she got a job doing social media for her team, because I think she would be fantastic at it. All right, 2 more here. Give us a fun fact about yourself that maybe a lot of people don't know.
I used my states one already. That's usually the one I go with.
That is a good fun fact too.
It is a great fun fact. I'm not sure I'm very fun. What is a fun fact about me?
Well, you've kind of dropped a bunch of them throughout. I shouldn't have even asked you that because you already dropped a bunch between Tokyo and Amsterdam and having interest in an ice cream shop.
My hair is really naturally curly, I swear. Let's see. I don't know if this is a fun fact. I don't know if a lot of people haven't known. So I'm Jewish, and I think that my last name gives it away, but apparently to people in Buffalo, it does not, because it's come up multiple times. I speak like very little Hebrew, but that's a fun fact that maybe like the Buffalo community doesn't know
cool.
about me that
Cool.
came to mind. So
That's cool. Good job. Okay, last one here. And this is the same question I always ask here. You could have three famous people, dead or alive, from any era in time ever. And you could have them over to your house tonight, have dinner, a couple drinks, whatever. I don't know. Maybe you want to have a serious conversation. Maybe you want to laugh, or a little combination of both. But you could pick three people to have at your table tonight. Who you got?
I'm assuming like family members are excluded from this.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, we'll do something
Unless
fun.
you got famous family members.
No, there's no famous Getzenbergs. Okay, so I haven't really been asked this question before. I would say, so James K. Polk is my favorite president, but he like has a rough track record. But I think it would be fun to chat with him. So I'll put him at my table.
Okay.
I've recently gotten really into F1, which is like a whole other thing, and I think it would be great to have Lewis Hamilton at my table for so many reasons. I think he'd be fantastic. Who else would I put there? There's everyone else is so boring. There's so many people that would be so cool. I don't know who my third person would be.
Oh.
I can think of someone.
I love.
I already have a president there, so I don't feel like I should put another one.
No multiple presidents. Only
not multiple presidents. That's so lame. Who else would be really cool? Can I have Michael Jordan there too? I think that would be a great.
Who wouldn't want Michael Jordan?
Yeah. That's not very exciting, but he'll come to my table. Anyway.
It works. This was a lot of fun. Again, it's been so long since I've been able to have one of these episodes, and what a great guest. Alaina Getzenberg, make sure you follow her on Twitter, Getzenberg. Check out ESPN.com. You do, I mean this. You do really good work. You're off to a great start here. I think you've developed a lot of popularity, and it's just going to continue to grow. And I really look forward, as you do get an opportunity to know this organization more and develop these relationships and stuff like that. I can't wait to see what you got coming in the future. This was a lot of fun. I got to learn a lot about you. I'm sure everybody listening and watching did as well. Thank you so much for doing the podcast. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, and I will be back with another episode on Friday, casual Friday with Joe Yurden. We will talk Buffalo Bills schedule release, Sabres. We'll have a starting five draft, all kinds of stuff. My man, Joe Yurden. Talk to you guys soon.